All right, this is going to be a breakdown video of FBI Director Robert Mueller and U.S. Attorney General John Ashcroft speaking to a press briefing at a press briefing on October 4th of 2001. And let's see what they have to say for each other, because during this press briefing, I'm going to talk about what the State Department was doing at the same time.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, the FBI continues to work on many fronts to respond to the acts of September 11th. To date, we have an unprecedented 260,000 potential leads and tips which have come to us in the course of this investigation. The American people continue to support our efforts in a truly impressive way. Nearly half of those leads have come through our telephone hotline and our internet site. Just last week, we had 24,000 tips come in through those two resources. Our laboratory and forensics experts have gathered and continue to examine roughly 3,000 pieces of evidence from the crash sites and from other searches. Many of these important pieces of evidence have been uncovered, and one such piece I think you received last week, and that was the several letters that were found at a number of the sites. We're also working with...
Talking about the letters that were found in Shanksville. Shanksville was holding, I think, like 27,000 pieces of mail. And there was a couple of letters from the hijackers themselves, which were, one was an Al-Qaeda letter that was talking about how to, I think there was three of them that were talking about how to prepare the body and the mind for a martyrdom attack.
Financial institutions and federal and international authorities to dry up the reservoir of funds that terrorist organizations draw upon to support their operations. The effort to seize such assets and to freeze those accounts is critical to sapping the strength of terrorism worldwide. We know from previous investigations that some terrorist attacks could have been much worse had they been better bankrolled. To date, $6 million in assets, both at home and abroad, have been frozen by the federal government.
Probably talking about the bank accounts that were made in Sun Trust in Florida, which a number of the muscle hijackers, including the powered hijackers, had accounts in. Funds that were being deposited from allegedly Mustafa al-Hawsawi, who is one of the financiers of the operation, who's currently in Guantanamo, one of the three that are left to be charged for 9/11 attacks. And plus, there was underfunding. There was funding coming, actually $125,000 that was allegedly wired from a Pakistani militant with ties to the Pakistan ISI, Omar Saeed Sheikh, to the ringleader of the 9/11 attacks for the powered hijackers, Muhammad Atta. That's alleged as well. But there's good evidence that came from the Pakistan ISI itself. In fact, Pakistan ISI director Mahmoud Ahmed had retired from his position just, I think, a couple of days after 9/11 attacks.
We, of course, are proud of the work of the men and women of the FBI in this investigation. But I'm also particularly grateful for the support and partnerships of our colleagues in law enforcement. Today, we are joined by a number of state and local law enforcement authorities. And through these representatives, I want to thank our state and local partners for their tireless efforts in this new war on terrorism. Their work continues to be outstanding. As we all realize, no one institution has enough resources or expertise to defeat terrorism. It must be a joint effort across agencies, across jurisdictions, and even across borders.
Sure enough.
I can tell you that the spirit of teamwork and cooperation in this investigation has been truly remarkable. State and local law enforcement are playing a critical role, collecting information, running down leads, and providing the kind of expertise critical to an effort of this magnitude and of this importance. Information sharing between us all is as important now as it ever has been, and anything and everything that helps facilitate that is truly welcome. One area in which state and local enforcement has historically played a leading role is in the area of civil rights. And during these times of anxiety and frustration, that role has taken on increasing importance. Vigilante attacks against Arab, Muslim, and Sikh Americans continue to escalate. Yesterday,
I know this feeling because I myself had experienced this, not personally, but there was a gas station nearby where I lived in Queens, New York, where a Sikh American was lit on fire. And the guy that did it, he's doing life in prison, apparently. He mistaken him for a Muslim. I remember going to a gas station on Fridays where I used to go out and seeing this one gas station we used to frequent, a friend of mine, and they were wearing these American hats. And they were Indians. They weren't even Muslims. And they'd wear American hats to show that they were patriotic. That's how fervent, the rabid fanatics were in the United States at the time, especially in New York. But mostly, everybody wasn't as racist that there was whispers out to be. But yeah, it's that they did experience some backlash from it, which is, just stupid.
day alone, the FBI
Every time I pause it, it'll pause for like 3 seconds.
initiated 15 new investigations, possibly linked to the September 11th attacks, which brings to the total 120 investigations we've opened under the hate crimes statute. Again, I want to finish by thanking our colleagues in state and local law enforcement for their guidance, their support, and their expertise in protecting the American people and enforcing the nation's civil rights laws. Thank you, and now let me turn it over to the Attorney General.
Thank you very much, Director Mueller, and it is an honor to be here with these representatives of law enforcement. I don't know of any American that hasn't been inspired with the understanding of the willingness of law enforcement to do whatever is necessary to secure the safety and the well-being of American citizens, and it has never been more dramatically evident than it has been in these weeks that have followed the tragic.
Well, 24 years later, has that not been the case? In fact, law enforcement, specifically Immigration Customs, ICE, has been quite aggressive, even to people carrying green cards. And I'm not saying that, of course, that we need to leave, certain immigrants alone. I do believe that if you're here illegally, you have to be deported and go through the proper channels to become a naturalized citizen. And it's not fair for, people who are, waiting to get in this country from other parts of the earth, that are trying to get in here, and they have to wait like 5 years, for their application to be processed, sometimes even longer. But this is not, time for that. But, it does seem that there is an attack on, it's just almost indiscriminate, just catching everybody and, deporting them, and some of them are, in the process of trying to be naturalized. But also at the same time, I have been, I've been going down to Grand Central, last couple of weeks. And this weekend, I went to a friend of mine who lived in Brooklyn. And I went by Grand Central and I showed them the spotlight report from the National Counterterrorism Center about Al Qaeda wanting to attack inside the United States. And this is supposed to be a nationwide bulletin report. It's supposed to go to every law enforcement center, local, state, and federal. And when I showed these police officers at the Grand Central, I showed them to like 3 different stations there. They never saw it, never even heard of it. One guy took a picture of it. So can I copy it? Yeah, absolutely. I told him. I think what I'm going to do is next time I'm going to make copies of the report and hand them out. I think it's especially with the incoming intelligence that Al Qaeda is going to attack the United States, and it's just a matter of time now. If they're not here, they will be coming here because of our foreign policy, which is a fucking disaster. But yeah, it seems that local law enforcement has lost the will or is ignorant about the incoming threats from Al Qaeda. And it's not like this is not, a lot of it is speculation, but there is intelligence, sporadic as it is. And it came from Al Qaeda's Saad bin Atef al Awlaki, the leader of Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, who basically said that we are to attack the United States, kill the president, kill the vice president, the secretary of defense, and the vice president. And for any Muslim inside the United States to attack inside the United States by whatever means necessary. And there are Al Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan. The threat reports are coming in that they are going to attack inside the United States using urban method warfare, unorthodox urban terrorism.
Tragic assault on American liberty and upon civilization, and it has been an assault on civilization. 78, I believe, different countries, all the way from Argentina to Zimbabwe. And when lost lives, and I could be wrong on the exact number of nations, but our local law enforcement, our partners in law enforcement, state and local, federal law enforcement agencies, pursued with a kind of vigor and intensity the effort to secure and make safe as many of those people as possible without regard to their own safety, and I'm honored to stand with you. I just want to thank you. These weeks have underscored for all Americans the degree to which we look to law enforcement for our safety and security.
True.
And these weeks also underscore the extent to which they return our trust by enduring risks, by, in some cases, paying the ultimate price so that we and our fellow citizens live in freedom. So it is really a pleasure, and again, I state the honor which I feel, express my profound gratitude to these individuals who represent these law enforcement agencies whose work has been so noble and has come at very substantial cost. With me today are representatives of the Hispanic American Police Command Officers Association, the National Sheriff's Association, the International Brotherhood of Police Officers, the Fraternal Order of Police, the National Association of Police Organizations, the International Association of Police Officers, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the National Association of Black Law Enforcement Officers, Executives, the Police Executives Research Forum. I want to thank all of these groups for helping our officials in Washington, the lawmakers, the members of the Congress understand the needs of law enforcement in order to respond effectively to the terrorist threat. These groups here today have worked hard to communicate their concerns to Congress, which are in substantial measure included in the legislative package recommended by the administration. As Attorney General, I want to thank all of you, both for what you've done in the past in those times of national emergency and what you're doing in terms of helping understand the nature of our opportunities and the need for tools. And I want to thank you for what you will do in the months ahead to ensure our safety.
Okay, well, I want to stop it here because right about here, the State Department had released a report about how to combat terrorism abroad. And there was 5 points administered by the Bush administration, and they were as follows. And this is talking about Afghanistan, not Iraq. One was to begin to destroy al-Qaeda's grip in Afghanistan by driving the Taliban from power, and that was through the CIA, the Special Forces, the Afghan militias, the Uzbeks, the Waziristans, and also the CIA Special Activities Division, headed under Hank Crumpton. Two, disrupt Al Qaeda's global operations and terrorist financing networks. And with the state police and the federal police and local police of each of these provinces here and abroad, they were beginning to do that. In fact, everything took a back seat with terrorism being number one. Three, destroy Al Qaeda terrorist training camps, specifically in Afghanistan, in Kandahar, Tora Bora. These were the areas that were going to be hit hard from the air. In fact, in the initial wave of attacks, they killed Al Qaeda's military commander and one of the most important individuals in Al Qaeda, Abu Hafs al-Masri, also known as Mohammed Atef. He's the one who coordinated with the attacks themselves. Four was help the innocent people of Afghanistan recover the Taliban's reign of terror. And this was a failure because the Taliban took over the country after we had a 20-year war that didn't do anything other than waste trillions of dollars. Five, helping Afghans put aside longstanding differences to form a new interim government that represents all Afghans, including the women. Again, this turned out to be a temporary stay because the Taliban took over the country in 2022. Now, the Bush administration was implementing a comprehensive and visionary foreign policy against international terrorism at this time, but he went against the wrong countries, and specifically Iraq. Later on, Obama took it the next step and destroyed Syria and Libya. Thank you, Susan Rice and Hillary Clinton and Samantha Power. They were the ones who helped formulate this disastrous plan called Libya. It's funny how we went to war against the countries that were at war against Islamism and didn't have a problem with Islamism until the United States got involved. And I think this is a reciprocating problem because it really shows that the United States doesn't know what the hell they're doing in terms of foreign policy and directing their foreign policy in other countries. So that was a big pet peeve of mine. It was like to get that out of the way, because I want you to know that the United States didn't directly support Al Qaeda. They did with Al Qaeda affiliates in Syria through a CIA operation Timber Sycamore, and they basically ignored the Islamists in Libya who killed Muammar Gaddafi through rebel guerrillas that are fighting now the Islamists in the country, and that's just a giant civil war and a mess. If the United States didn't get involved in Syria, didn't get involved with Libya, we wouldn't be having an Islamist problem. Right now, Syria is led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who's currently liquidating Islamic minorities. Why are we giving directions to Islamists? Because it's better to use them instead of the U.S. military to oust dictators without causing a war.
And safeguard.
That's why. Let's be honest.
Our freedom. I'm pleased and heartened to hear that progress is being made in the House and Senate toward finalization of legislation that responds to the needs of law enforcement for the right tools to fight terrorism. The process took a very important step forward last night when both the House and Senate agreed upon legislation that will now move the process in both houses of Congress. I want to thank my former colleagues in the Senate and the members of the House who have worked so hard and have exhibited such extraordinary commitment to the cause of our nation's security.
Yeah, that included the infringement of foreign combatants who are deemed terrorists or associates of terrorists without providing them the Geneva Conventions, right? The protections afforded to foreign combatants. Now, it was up to the Department of Justice to label people terrorists, and they had to use evidence for this. But the United States was in a rush, and the Bush administration said, well, if we could just get people to be renditioned to secret areas led by the CIA, right, and torture the shit out of these people, we can get answers, because we need answers now to prevent the next attack. But the problem was there was no next attack. All the information that was provided from the terrorists themselves and alleged suspects of terrorism were basically false, because it was all made through endured torture, which was labeled enhanced interrogation techniques, because they couldn't use the word torture without outraging the public at large. what the CIA's legal counsel, led by John Yoo, what they did was basically rewrite certain provisions and ignored the criticisms of those provisions from the House and Senate and rushed this without any approval from the Attorney General, John Ashcroft, or the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, or the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, or even the Department of Defense. In fact, Department of Defense legal counsel agreed with the legal counsel of the White House and basically said that it was quiet about it, but the FBI was quiet about it, but they said, yeah, go ahead and do it anyway, even though you're breaking the law. And this is what happened. And not only that, ladies and gentlemen, you had the NSA and Director Michael Hayden basically meeting with President Bush and says, look, with these privacy laws, it's going to be very hard to collect information and get it to you without infringing on without citizens' privacy rights. And Bush said, well, how can we overcome that? Well, Hayden said, let us break down the walls. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, email, text messages, phone calls were all collected and stored without your suspecting of it and sent to a data center, which was called the Utah Data Center in Pine Bluff, Utah. It's a huge data center with everyone's phone calls, text messages, and emails. It's still there. Nobody talks about it. Nobody.
I'm gratified for the progress that has been made, and I believe that there are a number of areas in which we can continue to work cooperatively together to strengthen this legislation and bring it to final passage. First, the legislation passed by the House Judiciary Committee sunsets important law enforcement intelligence gathering tools on December the 31st, 2003. Well, no one can guarantee that terrorism will sunset in 2 years. Our president has wisely counseled us as Americans that this is a long struggle. He has cautioned us to understand that we must be perseverant and that we must, in fact, be expecting to stay after this objective until we complete our responsibility and task. Our laws need to reflect the new war, the kind of responsibility and effort that we must wage. It must provide us with tools on a continuing basis to do so. Second, the House bill also would exclude relevant evidence from being offered in terrorist trials. I look forward to working with both the House and Senate to ensure that our law enforcement...
Let's talk about that for a second, too, because under the new laws written by the White House legal counsel was that there would be something called a forever detainee. That's what it was called. It was those who are too dangerous to be let go. Under these new laws, specifically under the White House legal counsel, and with the assistance of the CIA, was that detainees suspected of terrorism would not see any evidence whatsoever charged against them. They wouldn't even see the charges against them, and they could get a lawyer appointed to them by the Office of Naval Admissions, or at Guantanamo, they would be offered a lawyer from the Navy itself, or is it from the Department of Defense? I'm not too sure, but nevertheless, they couldn't even really choose their lawyers, but some of them did later on. They got some counsel, but the State Department and the CIA made it almost impossible for these people to get legal representation and people of their choice. So this was another issue. How could you not see evidence against you? How could you not see the charges against you? Abu Zubaydah, for example, was the first detainee captured, and then he was tortured, right? Now, he was later on facing a military commission's hearing, and the CIA had to really basically tell the truth because they didn't have anything on Abu Zubaydah. So he was basically labeled the number 3 man in Al-Qaeda. and in charge of a terrorist training camp. In fact, the training camp that he was in charge of was Kandahar training camp, was closed by the Taliban in 2001, and it was not an Al-Qaeda training camp. Also, an associate of his, Sheikh al-Libi, Ibn Sheikh al-Libi, who later on would be tortured by Egyptian authorities and give the Egyptian authorities, with permission of the CIA, of course, to imply that the Iraqi Baathists, the army themselves, along with the Hussein dynasty, had procured chemical and biological weapons with Al Qaeda, and that's how we went to war. But all that was fabricated. But yes, Abu Zubaydah is a forever detainee, currently held in Guantanamo without charge, by the way. But he's too dangerous. In fact, there was a Lithuanian committee that pressured the United States, specifically the State Department, to rescind charges against him because he was so brutally tortured. This is what the State Department did to us. This is what the CIA did. And yet, we didn't disband the CIA after all this nonsense. We should have. We should have disbanded them, specifically for the pre-intelligence failures and specifically after with the rendition and torture program.
The tools are as effective.
End of story. End of story.
As they can be. It would be a tragedy indeed to retreat from a capacity of law enforcement to use evidence in the process of seeking to strengthen the arm of law enforcement in the effort against terrorism. From the beginning, our talks with Congress have been guided by two principles. First, our laws governing terrorism should reflect the priority that the American people give to the fight against terrorism. And the American people expect us to give this fight the highest priority. Second, we will propose no change in the law that damages constitutional rights and protections that Americans hold dear.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. In fact, it happened without John Ashcroft's approval, by the way, because he was in the hospital. The NSA had basically said that we are going to take away the privacy rights of every single American without them knowing it. And it was even expanded under the Obama administration. Fuck, just look at Mark Klein, NSA, room 61A, 619A or something like that. Yeah, go ahead. Go Google that. What a big story that was.
Just as we have provided law enforcement with the tools they need to fight drug trafficking and organized crime without violating the rights and the freedoms of Americans, we are committed to meeting the challenge of terrorism with the same careful respect for the Constitution of the United States and the protections that Constitution accords to America's citizens.
I don't think he knew it.
We are gratified with the progress in the House and Senate, the progress that they are making toward providing law enforcement with necessary additional tools to fight terrorism. And we will continue to work with them as they consider this legislation finally. Be pleased now to respond to questions.
Here we go.
As terrorists, we're told. Can you tell us whether any of those people have been arrested and are directly related to the September 11 attacks, and have they been charged?
There are about three categories of the ways in which people have been detained. People have been detained who have violated state or local law enforcement provisions, laws. Many of those groups represented here today have been a part of that. People have been arrested because they are in possession of information which we feel is valuable in this inquiry, and the courts have provided for their arrest and detention on what are known as material witness warrants. Then other individuals basically have been arrested either in conjunction with activities here or as a result of their association with individuals involved here and their having violated their immigration status. And I believe those define the categories of individuals that have been arrested, and at this time that's the nature of the comment that we would make on them. Yes, sir.
With respect to one of those categories, actually it was President Bush today who said 150 terrorists associated with the Al-Qaeda organization specifically are in custody, and it sounded like many of those may well be overseas. Do either of you have any accounting, either domestically or overseas, in terms of people who may have this particular connection?
I'm not prepared at the moment to say a specific number for domestic detentions versus detentions overseas. Yes, sir.
Well,
The British government says at least 3 of the 19 hijackers have been positively identified as associates of Al-Qaeda, and that 1 has been identified as playing key roles in the East African embassy attacks and the U.S. coal attack. Are both of those facts true, sir?
I'm not in a position to verify or deny attacks.
Most likely Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, but there was nobody else. He's probably mentioning even the leadership, Tawfiq bin Attash, for example, Talad. You know, he's alleged to have been, but Fahad al-Qusa was not arrested.
Allegations like that, yes.
General, with respect to the
He was arrested
anti-terrorism proposals, one of the sticking points with the Senate had to do with the sharing with intelligence agencies of grand jury information. And everything nearly came unglued because the administration decided it could not live with the idea of post-judicial scrutiny. Why is it that the FBI, the CIA, object so much to having a judge just be notified in the aftermath of turning over grand jury information in an emergency situation?
We believe that those issues have been resolved, and that the climate for exchanging information that'll be created by the bill, which will take down some of the walls.
And those walls were made specifically to prevent other agencies from using that information without any judicial review. Okay. In other words, if the FBI has basically evidence to show that there was a specific person named in a terrorist indictment, the CIA can't use that without having their own evidence review. So this is the problem that we're having here, is that without the walls, every agency can get involved with every other agency and use the same information, even though some of it may not be vetted correctly. All right. These charges could pile up. Also, at the same time, pre 9/11, the CIA wasn't sharing shit with the FBI. The NSA wasn't sharing shit with the CIA. The NSA wasn't sharing shit with the FBI. The FBI wasn't sharing shit with the CIA, and vice versa. Nobody was sharing shit with anybody. And this is the reason why the 9/11 attacks were successful, is because you had the DIA, the FBI, the NSA, the CIA, just basically, collecting data, which, had it been shared with everybody, would have prevented the 9/11 attacks, even in the year 1999, right? That's when the DIA's Able Danger program started, right? And then you had the CIA's, CTC and the Alex station, the Bin Laden issue station, the FBI's own Bin Laden unit, and specifically the NSA's Yemen Hub unit, Yemen Hub, which was the hub of Al Qaeda electronic activity. So there, right there, you could have broke the 9/11 planes operation, and nobody wanted to work with anybody. So I don't think this was a manufactured attack. You just had a bunch of malfeasance, and maybe with certain people at the very top basically ignoring the warnings and basically saying that if the attack comes, we'll just take advantage of it, in which they did. Now, as for foreign intelligence, that's a different story. The Saudis and Israelis may have had specific knowledge, albeit notwithstanding the NSA or the CIA. Maybe they didn't have specifics, but I would be really remiss if I didn't say that the Saudis and Israelis did have specific information, because they were on the ground next to these people. Read the Gerald Shea memorandum. I have a playlist over there. Watch my Operation Encore series. It talks about all the information the FBI had regarding informants inside the circles of some of these 9/11 hijackers.
Will provide a basis for facilitating that exchange of information. That's what we were pursuing. We need to have a circumstance where if there aren't questions, if someone in a grand jury describes a situation that could threaten the safety and security of our citizens, there aren't questions about whether or not that can quickly be shifted from the grand jury setting either to the Department of Defense or to other law enforcement agencies or to the intelligence arena so that we can coordinate that information with other information. That's our objective. We believe that the bill now will provide a basis for that kind of facilitation of information sharing. Thank you.
Judicial notification afterwards then?
I believe that we've arrived at a place that will provide the basis for getting this done well and without recrimination. I don't really understand the threat here. The threat is that law enforcement officials and others involved with the security of Americans would have information that helped them do their job. To provide a base, to layer bureaucracy on that unnecessarily simply doesn't provide a benefit, and it provides an encumbrance. Yes.
See, now that's the problem right there, right? So we're going to end it there because the last question really was pretty much vague and non-consequential. But here's the issue. The issue is that here you have intelligence agencies from the federal, state, and local levels all working in tandem about time, right? But before 9/11, they weren't. And now with the attacks happening, now there's a rush to get the information, even though the information was there, which we could have stopped the attacks. But now there's a rush for information about stopping a potential next attack, and it never came because the information wasn't there. There was no next attack. But that didn't stop the federal government from implementing legislature and even covert legislature that or infringe on the public civil liberties that still stand to this day. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video, everybody.